My cousin Wesley was currently sitting at an upscale downtown steakhouse ordering a $500 bottle of wine to celebrate stealing my family business. He had no idea that exactly 4 minutes ago, I finalized the legal freeze on our $412,500 commercial operating account. I am writing this on a brand new burner account because several members of my extended family monitor my social media, but the specific legal receipts and financial amounts are accurate to the single dollar. My name is Owen, and I am the primary operations manager and lead technician of Henry & Sons Plumbing in Columbus, Ohio. My grandfather Henry started this plumbing and mechanical contracting company in 1974 with a single-used van and a toolbox. By the time I turned 22, he had grown it into a regional powerhouse with 14 service trucks and a massive commercial client base. I spent 12 years working directly by his side, learning how to rebuild industrial boilers, snake massive commercial mainlines, and manage complex municipal piping contracts. I earned my master plumber license while working 60-hour weeks, covered in grease and sewer water, because I genuinely loved the trade and loved my grandfather. My cousin Wesley, who was exactly 2 years older than me, took a completely different path in life. He was always the golden child of the extended family because he wore pristine button-down shirts, attended an expensive private university, and graduated with a degree in business marketing. Our Aunt Diane and Uncle Marcus constantly bragged about Wesley at every single family gathering, painting him as the next great corporate executive. Meanwhile, they looked down on me, treating me like a low-class laborer just because I showed up to Sunday dinners with dirt under my fingernails and boots that smelled like PVC glue. They completely ignored the fact that my hard work was generating the actual revenue that kept the family legacy alive. When our grandfather Henry passed away 14 months ago at age 81, his will revealed that he had left the plumbing business split exactly 50-50 between Wesley and me. However, because our grandfather was a practical man who knew my strengths were in the field, he inserted a clause stating that Wesley would handle the office administration, payroll, and financial bookkeeping. The moment the family read that clause, Wesley immediately developed a massive ego and began acting like he was my superior boss rather than my equal business partner. Aunt Diane actually told me at the funeral reception that I should be grateful Wesley was around to handle the smart person work so I could focus on digging ditches. The toxic dynamic escalated almost immediately after the probate process finalized and Wesley took control of the corporate bank accounts. He refused to step foot in the actual shop warehouse because he claimed the smell of thread cutting oil ruined his custom wool suits. He rented a luxury executive suite in a high-rise building 3 miles away from our actual operations facility, spending $4,500 a month in corporate funds for an office we did not need. He then purchased a brand new custom Ford F-250 King Ranch Edition truck valued at $94,000 using a corporate lease, claiming it was a necessary marketing vehicle for client relations. In reality, he used that pristine truck to drive to high-end country clubs and expensive lunch meetings while our actual field technicians were driving 10-year-old vans with failing transmission systems. I tolerated his vanity for the first 6 months because the business was still making incredible money from our long-term commercial service contracts with local hospital chains and property management firms. I was managing a crew of 11 dedicated technicians, waking up at 4 in the morning to coordinate emergency commercial pipe bursts, and ensuring our field operations ran flawlessly. But Wesley started squeezing our expenses to fund his new lifestyle. He canceled our standard end-of-year technician bonuses, claiming the market was tight, which caused 2 of our best master plumbers to quit on the spot. He also started denying my purchase orders for high-quality American-made brass fittings and commercial pumps, forcing me to buy cheap alternative parts from a discount supplier to save a few dollars. Whenever I confronted Wesley about these budget cuts at our weekly operational meetings, he would lean back in his leather chair, smile condescendingly, and tell me that I did not understand high-level corporate finance. He told me that my job was to spin wrenches and keep the customers happy, while his job was to optimize our profit margins and scale the brand. I knew something was fundamentally wrong because our billing cycle was packed, and we were completing more high-ticket commercial projects than ever before. The numbers simply did not add up, but because Wesley controlled the online portal for our primary commercial bank accounts, I did not have immediate visibility into the daily cash flow ledgers. Instead of starting an open shouting match that would cause Aunt Diane and Uncle Marcus to rally the entire family against me, I decided to play the long game and quietly build my own leverage. Over the next 5 months, I focused entirely on strengthening my personal relationships with our top 15 commercial clients, who provided nearly 80% of our annual recurring revenue. I personally handled their midnight emergencies, refused to charge them inflated holiday rates, and proved to them that I was the actual brains and muscle behind the operational success of the company. The regional director of the largest property management group in Ohio even told me during a lunch meeting that they only renewed their contract because they trusted my specific mechanical expertise. While Wesley was busy playing the role of a wealthy corporate CEO at local networking events, I quietly established a completely independent corporate entity called Apex Commercial Piping LLC. I registered it secretly using a private registered agent service so my name would not immediately pop up on public state databases that Wesley might monitor. I established clean commercial credit lines and set up a separate operating structure, completely independent of Henry & Sons Plumbing. I did not move any money or violate any non-compete clauses at that time, because I needed to wait for the exact moment when Wesley would inevitably expose his true intentions. The trigger event occurred on a Tuesday afternoon when I returned to our main shop warehouse to look for an older, physical paper invoice from a specialized medical gas supplier. The supplier claimed we owed them $8,400 for oxygen line equipment we installed at a local surgery center, but Wesley insisted he had already paid the invoice weeks ago. Because the supplier was threatening to place a mechanical lien on our client's property, I drove over to Wesley's separate high-rise executive office to find the physical payment receipt. Wesley was not there because he was spending the afternoon playing golf with his country club friends, but his administrative assistant allowed me into his private office to look through the filing cabinets. While searching through his desk drawers for the supplier invoice, my hand brushed against a thick manila folder tucked deep behind a stack of marketing brochures. I pulled it out and opened it, expecting to find old tax documents, but instead, I found a complete wire transfer ledger from our corporate emergency capital reserve account. My grandfather had established that specific reserve account decades ago, keeping exactly $412,500 untouched to serve as emergency insurance in case the business ever faced a massive economic downturn or a catastrophic lawsuit. The ledger showed that over the last 9 months, Wesley had systematically executed 31 separate wire transfers out of that reserve account. Every single one of those transfers was sent directly to a dummy entity called Wesco Administrative Services LLC, which listed Wesley as the sole owner and beneficiary. The description lines for the transfers were filled with vague phrases like management consulting fees, brand development restructuring, and executive administrative overrides. He had completely drained the entire $412,500 capital reserve account down to a balance of less than $150. He had effectively stolen nearly $500,000 of our shared family inheritance to fund his custom luxury truck, his tailored suits, his country club memberships, and his expensive steak dinners. As I sat there in his leather chair with my hands shaking from pure rage, I kept flipping through the hidden folder and found an even worse document. It was a fully executed, signed letter of intent to sell the entire assets, branding, and client lists of Henry & Sons Plumbing to a massive, predatory national corporate consolidation firm based out of Texas. The agreed purchase price was $1.2 million, and the closing date was set for exactly 3 weeks from that day. The contract was structured so that the consolidation firm would absorb all our equipment, fire our entire field crew, and rebrand the operation under a generic corporate name. Wesley had signed the document as the managing partner, and he had completely forged my signature on the partner consent addendum page to bypass my 50-50 ownership rights. Wesley was planning to completely liquidate our grandfather's lifetime legacy, put 11 dedicated technicians out of work, pocket his half of the sale, and flee with the $412,500 he had already stolen. If the sale went through, I would be left completely broke, tied up in massive legal battles with a multi-million-dollar corporate consolidation firm, while my cousin lived like a millionaire in a different state. I took my smartphone, carefully photographed every single page of the wire transfer ledgers, the fraudulent invoices, and the forged sale contract, and then placed the manila folder back exactly where I found it. I walked out of that high-rise office building with absolute clarity, knowing that a standard family confrontation or a slow-moving lawsuit would give Wesley enough time to transfer the remaining funds into an offshore account or finalize the fraudulent sale. I needed to execute a proactive, legally flawless counter-move that would completely dismantle his entire life before he even realized I knew about his betrayal. The next morning, I initiated the first phase of my payback plan by calling a private meeting with the regional director of our largest property management group and the executives of our top commercial hospital clients. I laid out the physical evidence of Wesley's financial fraud and showed them the signed intent to sell contract with the predatory corporate consolidation firm. I explained that Henry & Sons Plumbing was about to be liquidated by a corrupt partner, which would completely void their existing service guarantees and maintenance warranties. I then presented them with a clean, legal solution and immediate assignment of their service contracts to my independent entity, Apex Commercial Piping LLC. Because these clients trusted me personally and knew that my crew was the one actually maintaining their complex systems, every single one of them signed the contract assignment paperwork within 48 hours. I quietly moved 80% of our total recurring commercial revenue out from under Henry & Sons Plumbing and legally secured it under my own independent company. I then contacted our 11 field technicians, explained the entire situation in plain terms, and offered all of them immediate jobs at Apex Commercial Piping LLC with higher base pay and the restoration of their full end-of-year performance bonuses. Every single technician signed their new employment agreements that same afternoon, completely emptying the operational workforce of our old company. With our clients and our technicians legally secured, I hired a high-end forensic accounting attorney who specialized in corporate embezzlement and fiduciary fraud among business partners. We spent 4 days compiling a massive, unassailable legal filing that included the photographed wire transfers, the forged signatures, and the unauthorized dummy corporation invoices. My attorney presented this evidence to a county judge during an emergency ex parte hearing, which is a specialized legal proceeding where a judge can issue immediate orders without notifying the opposing party beforehand to prevent the destruction of evidence or the flight of stolen assets. The judge was so appalled by the clear, documented evidence of forgery and corporate theft that he immediately issued a sweeping emergency temporary restraining order. This order legally froze every single commercial bank account associated with Henry & Sons Plumbing, completely blocked the pending sale to the Texas consolidation firm, and placed an immediate freeze on Wesley's personal bank accounts and the assets of his dummy corporation, Wesco Administrative Services. The court also ordered an immediate forensic audit of all corporate financial records dating back to the day our grandfather passed away. The climax of the payback arrived on a Friday evening, exactly 2 days after the judge signed the emergency orders. Wesley was hosting a massive, lavish celebration dinner at the most expensive country club in the city to celebrate what he believed was the impending finalization of his $1.2 million corporate sale. He had invited Aunt Diane, Uncle Marcus, several of their wealthy social friends, and even a few local business owners to show off his incredible corporate success. He spent the entire night bragging about his business acumen, drinking expensive champagne, and loudly talking about how he was moving on to bigger and better international ventures because he had outgrown our local market. I did not attend the dinner, but I coordinated with a licensed professional process server to ensure the legal papers were delivered at the exact moment of maximum public humiliation. Right as the main course was being served, the process server walked directly into the main dining room of the country club, approached Wesley's table, and dropped a massive stack of federal court documents and emergency injunction papers directly onto his plate. The process server loudly stated, "Wesley, you are being served with an emergency court injunction, an asset freeze order, and a lawsuit for corporate embezzlement and fiduciary fraud." The entire dining room went completely silent as Wesley turned pale white and stammered that there must be some kind of mistake. He quickly pulled out his smartphone to log into his corporate banking app to prove his financial status, but he was met with a bold red error screen stating that all operational and capital accounts were completely locked by court order. He then tried to use his corporate black card to pay the country club's evening event bill of $4,200, but the card was violently declined by the electronic terminal. Aunt Diane and Uncle Marcus began shouting at the process server, demanding to know who was behind this insult, until Wesley finally looked at the front page of the lawsuit and saw my name listed as the sole plaintiff. The fallout was immediate, absolute, and utterly devastating for Wesley's lifestyle because he had built his entire existence on a foundation of stolen corporate credit lines. Because his personal and corporate accounts were completely frozen by the court, he could not make the $1,400 monthly lease payment on his custom Ford F-250 King Ranch truck, and it was publicly repossessed from his apartment parking lot less than 3 weeks later. The luxury high-rise executive suite he rented was hit with an immediate eviction notice for non-payment of rent, and his expensive country club membership was summarily revoked due to his public card decline and the pending criminal and civil allegations. Aunt Diane called my phone dozens of times over the following days, screaming that I was destroying the family, ruining her son's brilliant career, and acting out of pure blue-collar jealousy. I simply told her that Wesley should have thought about his career before he decided to forge my signature to sell our grandfather's legacy and steal $412,500 from our emergency reserve fund. I told her that every single dollar would be accounted for by the court-appointed forensic auditor, and I hung up the phone. The final legal resolution took several months of intense courtroom battles, but Wesley's legal team quickly realized they had absolutely zero defense against the mountain of physical, digital, and contractual evidence we possessed. To avoid a lengthy federal criminal trial for grand larceny and wire fraud, Wesley signed a comprehensive civil settlement agreement that stripped him of every single asset he owned. The court ordered the complete dissolution of our old partnership, and Wesley was forced to legally surrender his entire 50-50 ownership stake in Henry & Sons Plumbing to me for exactly $0. Furthermore, the settlement required him to liquidate his personal investment portfolios, empty his remaining savings accounts, and place a massive secondary lien on his private residential property to fully repay the $412,500 he had siphoned into his dummy corporation, along with an additional $75,000 to cover my extensive legal and forensic accounting fees. Today, Wesley is living in a tiny, cramped one-bedroom apartment on the absolute outskirts of the city, driving a heavily rusted, 15-year-old compact sedan that he had to buy using cash from a buy-here-pay-here lot. He lost his tailored suits, his high-end social status, and his wealthy country club friends, and he currently works as a low-level, entry-tier customer service representative at a local retail big-box store earning just above minimum wage. Aunt Diane and Uncle Marcus no longer brag about their golden child at family gatherings, and in fact, they have completely stopped attending family events out of pure shame and social embarrassment. Meanwhile, my new independent company, Apex Commercial Piping LLC, is absolutely thriving. We successfully transitioned all 11 of our original master technicians, added 4 brand new service vans to our fleet, and expanded our commercial operations into 2 neighboring counties. I still wake up early, and I still get my hands dirty when a complex industrial boiler system needs my personal attention, but I do it knowing that our grandfather's true legacy was completely saved from a greedy relative's betrayal. It is amazing how quickly a family golden child can lose their entire fabricated lifestyle when they forget that real success is built on hard honest work rather than forged signatures and stolen bank accounts. Speaking of family members who think they can use a pen to rewrite reality, that reminds me of the time my aunt tried to use a fake handwritten codicil to claim ownership of my grandmother's entire lakeside estate, but that is a wild story for another day.